Hello, morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this fun masterclass session on data interpretation conducted by the Institute of Actuaries of India. My name is Kevin Punmya and I am a qualified actuary of the Institute and a qualified chartered accountant. I have been working as an actuary for the last 5 years, primarily in consultancies. And I'm a passionate teacher. I've been teaching actuarial science over the past 5 years as well, primarily at private coaching classes in Mumbai. Today the idea is to cover the data interpretation side of your ACET examination. So if you know about ACET, there are primarily 5 big sections, that is mathematics, statistics, which are the 2 biggest. Then you have data interpretation, English and logical reasoning. So today the idea is to cover what the data interpretation section is all about in this ACET masterclass. So yes, how are we planning to cover this data interpretation? So because it's a masterclass session, I don't want to go too deep into the syllabus or something. The best way I believe we can understand what to expect, how to actually be ready for the exam, is by solving past exam questions. So what I've done for data interpretation is I will be solving the past 3 data interpretation sections completely. Because data interpretation questions are quite cohesive, so you have one particular data set and then 3-4 questions that are part of that particular data set. That's why I decided to go ahead with the entire section itself. Usually you can expect around 10 questions, 10 to 11 questions under data interpretation. So let's get started. We'll start with the latest one, that is the August 2025 paper. So let's go ahead, look at the data, and then one by one let's understand how to solve these sums. You have to apply basic logical principles, basic mathematics in most of the cases, and just understand the data, read the question carefully and you should be good to go. You don't need to really mug up something beforehand. It's not like statistics where you have to learn a lot of distributions. It's not like mathematics where you have to know a lot of formulas. No, this is more intuitive, more logic based, and speaks more to the presence of mind than any learning capacity. So let's start. So your first question is on data interpretation. So you are given something like this, that packages delivered by region in thousands, and you have this graph. These graphs are typically there as adjoining things, so you're not expected to actually read this graph and interpret the number from there, although you can do it. It's a pretty clear graph, but they also give you a table along with it just to show the same numbers. So in this case, you have a logistics company that tracks the number of packages delivered by its 5 regional hubs over 5 years. So it is 5 regional hubs, and you can see it in the chart as well: north, south, east, west, central. What are the number of packages they have delivered over the last 5 years from 2020 to 2024? That's exactly what the data is all about. Okay, and this chart data is given in a tabular format in the next part. So as you can see, you have year 2020 to 24, north, south, east, west, central, and these are all number of packages that were delivered in thousands. So this is like 120,000, 180,000 and so on. Okay. So you don't need to read the entire data. You just have the good idea of what the data is all about. Now we can go ahead and read the question, and we have to resort back to the data at each point in time to, understand exactly what the answer is and so on. So let's start. Question 1. In which year did the central hub experience the highest percentage increase in deliveries over the previous year? Okay, so central hub, which means they are focusing on this 5th hub. So that's the good part about reading the data. Once you've read the data beforehand, okay, central hub out of the 5, this is the one they are talking about. And carefully reading the question is important here, because they are asking highest percentage increase in deliveries. So they are not asking you highest number of deliveries, that would be 2024 of course, but the highest increase in deliveries over the past years. And also it's a percentage increase, not an absolute increase. Correct? So what is the difference? Like the absolute increase would be 10,000 here, then 20,000, then 10,000, then 20,000. But that is not what they are asking. They are asking percentage increase. So how do you go with that? So question 41, the way you will do it is the central hub data points 90, 100, 120, 130, 150. Okay. So how have they increased? So for example, in this year you can see it went from 90 to 100, which means there was an increase of 10. Next year there was an increase of 20, 10 again, and 20 again. This is the absolute increase. So for your reference, I will write these are the absolute increases. We don't want the absolute increases. We want the percentage increases. So how will you calculate that? So this 10,000 increase was seen on a base of 90,000, because last year I had delivered 90,000 packages. This year I gained 10,000. So what did I gain this 10,000 on? The earlier 90,000. So we will do it something like upon 90,000. Similarly, the next year I gained 20,000 on a base of 100,000. So upon 100. Similarly, this will be upon 120, upon 130. And now you can calculate these percentages. That is, this is roughly 11.11%. This is 20%. This would be 1 by 12, so roughly 8.33%. And this will be 2 by 13. So we can just calculate this. It should be somewhere around 16% or something like that. Let's see. So that's 15.4%. Okay. But you can clearly see we have a winner. The highest increase was seen in this year. That is in the year when you increased from 100 to 120. And that was the year 2022. So 2022, which is B, is the correct answer here. So we'll just say answer B. Correct. So that's it. Like, you just have to understand the question, look at the data, and write the answers. Understanding the question or understanding how to solve will not going to be a problem. In data interpretation, I can assume most of you will have a problem with silly mistakes. That is, okay, you even found, for example, the 20%, but by mistake you went ahead with this 100, the base year number, which showed you 2021. Or you make like the mistake of taking the absolute reference, something like that, Those types of silly mistakes you need to just avoid. Read the question carefully and the marks are yours to take. Okay. So with that, we move to the next question, which is, what is the average annual growth rate in percentage of total packages delivered across all hubs from 2020 to 2024? Okay, so in 2020 I delivered X number of packages. In 2024 I delivered Y number of packages. What was the annualized average growth? So how do we find that? Let's see. So we have question 42. First, we need to obviously know the total number of packages delivered in 2020 and then the total number of packages delivered in 2024. So that's going to be the more important thing. So in 2020 we have 120 plus this 150, that's 270, 400, 500 and 590. So we had 590,000 packages delivered in 2020. What about 2024? So you have 160, that's 380, 380 plus 170, that's 550. You are advised to do this on calculators, by the way. Then you have 700 and 850. So this is 850. Okay, so we grew from 590 to 850. Great. What is the annualized growth? Now this is a part you need to be very careful of. You are most likely going to be finance students as well, right? Because if you do study actuarial science, you will be studying finance related concepts in depth. A very common mistake here is somebody may just calculate, okay, we want to see how much did we grow. So 850, 290. So you had a growth of 260. Okay. 260 over 590, that's the growth percentage, and we can just calculate 260 over 590, that's 0.4407, so almost 44%. Now a common mistake would be to do something like, okay, so this happened over a span of 4 years, yeah, 2020 to 1, 2, 3 and 4. So over a span of 4 years this happened. So somebody may just think that the annual average growth is something like 0.4407 divided by 4, 0.1102, something like this approximately. And this would be wrong, because that is not how you calculate annualized growth. That is, you don't take a simple average like this. Annualized growth is your compounded growth. So how did you grow on a compound basis year on year? That is what is being asked. And the way to do that is not like this, but you have to see, okay, I am at 850, I grew all the way from 590. Okay, so my growth was 1.4407, like this is the growth factor, and this happened over a span of 4 years. So in a way you can understand that the growth rate that we are looking for will be 1 plus x raised to 4. So our growth rate is 1 plus x raised to 4. X is the growth rate that we are looking for, and that's 1.4407. So now you can simplify this, that okay, that means 1 plus x is 1.4407 raised to 1 by 4. This is your compound interest logic that we apply on this growth rate, and therefore 1 plus x would be something like 1.4407 raised to 1 by 4, that is 1.0956, and therefore x is 0.0956, or you can say 9.56 percentage. So x is 9.56 percentage, which means your annualized growth is 9.56 percentage, and you can see your option B is exactly that, and that is the correct answer. So your answer is option B. Correct? So again, a very good question, an interesting question, and especially the good thing about this question is 11.02% is not a part of the option. Otherwise, that's a very common mistake or confusion point which students may do, that they may just go ahead with 11.02%, wherein 9.56% is the correct answer. Okay, so here we just find the compounded growth rate and we are good to go. So those were the first two questions. We have a few more on the same data set. So now 43 says, if each delivery generates a profit of 15,000 rupees per 1,000 packages, okay, what was the total profit from South and East hubs combined in 2022? So quite a straightforward question. Just go to 2022, look at South and East hubs total deliveries. So South was 180 and East was 155, right? South and East. So 180 and 155, that is total of 335,000 deliveries. So question 43, total deliveries were 180 plus 155, that is 335, and you made a profit of 15,000 per 1,000 packages that were delivered. So your total profit was, obviously because this is already in 1,000, so you will do 335 into 15,000, and you can just calculate this now using your calculators. 15,000 into 335, and you will get 5025000. And if you look at the options, so they have rounded it off. This is 50,25,000, or you can say this is nothing but 5.03 million. So that's option A. Correct? So again, quite a good straightforward question, and the idea is to show you guys the range of questions, right? Like the previous one was not straightforward, question 42, but then 43 was kind of, or rather very straightforward. So the idea here is, if you see a difficult sum in data interpretation, you don't need to stop or think like, oh my god, what will happen? I'm messing this up. It's only going to go worse from here. No. Even if you don't get something, that's fine. Just move to the next question. There is a very good chance you will score a full mark there. So time is the essence. Just ensure you make the most of your time, and it should be a good experience. Okay. Finally, we move to question 44. So which region showed the most consistent year-over-year growth in terms of lowest standard deviation of deliveries? So this is kind of a confusing question, and I'll tell you what's the confusion, because they are asking for the most consistent year-over-year growth. So growth would mean like how are you growing in terms of percentage or numbers and so on. But then they have defined how are they measuring growth, which is in terms of lowest standard deviation of deliveries. So you can kind of ignore the most consistent year-over-year part, because they have just directly mentioned which region showed the lowest standard deviation of deliveries. That's the question. That's it. So how will you do this? You have 5 data sets. You have to calculate standard deviation of each of them. So you can do this directly in your calculators, obviously. That is, you put in those 5 data sets, get those standard deviations. It is time consuming, but there's no other way, and you just have to score, and it's for 2 marks. So you have relatively more time. Just compute those standard deviations and find out for which of those it is the worst. One hint I can give you is they have given 4 options: north, south, central, west. So you don't need to calculate it for east, because that is anyway not going to be the answer. So out of north, south, central, west, you have to just find out which has the lowest standard deviation. So I hope everyone is aware of the calculation of standard deviation. This happens directly in your calculator. In case you are wondering how it is done, so the formula for variance is obviously summation of xi square minus x bar the whole square upon n, or n minus 1 for sample. That's absolutely fine. This is variance, and naturally standard deviation is square root of variance. So that's it. You can apply this formula, although you don't really need to. As I said, in your calculator you can directly calculate the standard deviation, and the standard deviations, if you calculate, so I've filled in the standard deviations for those 4 areas, which is just using the data set. So north 15.17, south is 27, west is 20.74, and central is 23.88. And you can see there is a very clear winner, north, over here. That is the lowest standard deviation was seen by north, which means they had the most consistent growth according to them. So option A, north, is your correct answer. Correct. So as I said, just a bit lengthy, but otherwise you just have a very straightforward answer for 2 marks. So that was your question 44. Last sum based on this original data set is: assume the West Hub can only operate at a maximum of 150,000 packages per year. In which year did the West Hub reach or exceed 90% of its operational capacity? Okay. So they are saying that the West Hub has a maximum capacity of 150,000. That is, these are the number of packages they can deliver at maximum capacity. No breaks, nothing, no this thing. This is what they can reach. We are being asked that in which years did they operate at least 90% capacity. So if I just multiply this with 90%, it comes to 135,000. So we just need to find out that in which years did they operate or did they deliver 135,000 or more packages. So we can just go back to the question, and you can see this is for the West Hub. So for the West Hub, you can see 100, 110, 130, and it's the last 2 years, 140, 150, where they operated above 135,000. So that is year 2023 and 2024. And if you look at the options, option B is the one that tells us that. So your answer is 2023 and 2024. That is option B. So just like that, we were able to complete 5 sums based on this original data set. You just have to apply your thinking mind once and get those answers. Okay. So if everything is great till now, let's move on to the next question of data interpretation from August 2025. Okay, so we have an interesting data set. It says the investors portfolio distribution. You have 4 asset classes: equity, debt, real estate, and others. And you're given a pie chart of how he has proportionately sort of distributed his wealth or his portfolio in these 4 asset classes. Whenever you see a pie chart, you should always first ensure that the percentage totals add up to 100. So let's see, 40 plus 35, that's 75, plus 15, 90, plus 10, 100%. Perfect. So you have 100% total, which means this pie chart is fine. Now let's see what the question is. So yes, they have just mentioned the same thing. Investor is divided into 4 asset classes. If the total investment is 50 lakhs, how much is it invested in real estate? So again, if you just understand this data, the question is quite straightforward. 15% is into real estate. Total investment is 50 lakhs. So all we need to do is we need to calculate real estate investment, which would be the total investment multiplied by the percentage share. So percentage of real estate, which is obviously 50 lakhs into 15%, and you can get 7.5 lakhs. So this type of question, I'm pretty sure if you're a math enthusiast, you don't even need to think so much. 50 lakhs, 15%, even if you don't need calculators, just directly write the answer. You don't need to do all this rough work. This is just to explain. So 7.5 lakhs, do we have it in the option? Yes, that's option C, and that is the correct answer, option C. So 7.5 lakhs is the correct answer for question 46. Very good. Let's hope the other questions are also as straightforward. So let's move to question 47. It says, what is the difference in investment amount between equity and debt? Okay. So equity has 40% investment, debt has 35% investment. So let's keep it simple. Let's calculate the amount under both. Equity would be, so this is question 47, 40% of 50 lakhs, that is 20 lakhs, and debt would be 35% of 50 lakhs, that would be 17.5 lakhs. So the difference between the two is of course a 2.5 lakh rupees, and you can clearly see among these options that option B is 2.5 lakhs. So you can directly say that here the answer is option B. So very good. We just calculated the core amount and got the difference. If you want, you could just directly calculate the difference in percentage terms, which is 5%, and then calculate 5% of 50 lakhs. That would also be 2.5 lakhs. Absolutely the same. There are no steps, no methods. You just have to get the answer, right? So that's question 47 based on the investor data. Let's move to question 48. Question 48, equity is expected to grow by 10% next year. What will be the new amount invested in equity? Okay. So equity we already calculated. Currently it is 20 lakhs. We want to increase this by 10%. So new equity or next year's equity will simply be 20 into 1 plus 10%. So because you are growing it by 10%, you'll obviously have the principal 20 lakhs plus 10% additionally you will put in. So 1 plus 10%, that's 20 to 1.1, which is of course 22 lakhs. So the new amount of equity will be 22 lakhs, which is your option C, which is the correct answer. So far so good with this question. Hardly any twisters or bouncers here. Let's hope that it stays the same. So let's move to the next question, which is question 49. If the investor wants debt and others combined to represent no more than 40% of the portfolio, by what percentage must the debt investment be reduced, assuming others remain constant? So what are they trying to say? Debt and others total should be 40%. What are they currently? Currently others is 10%, debt is 35%. So what we have is a total of 45% as debt and others. We want it to reduce to 40%, which means simply we want to remove 5% from debt, correct? Because your total amount of investment will be the same. You will remove 5% from debt and put it into equity or real estate. Others will be constant, correct? So you will simply remove 5% from debt. That's the main idea. So the question is, what percentage must the debt investment be reduced? Okay. So the way you can write this, or the way you can think about it, is currently obviously debt is 35%, others is 10%, total of 45%. You want to make this to 40%, which means you want to reduce it by 5%. Others will remain constant at 10%. So naturally debt will be reduced to 30%. So what do we mean by that? That existing debt investment is 17.5 lakhs. We just calculated above. What we are saying is we want to reduce it to 13%. So new debt investment or new debt will be 30% of 50 lakhs. That's 15 lakhs. So from 17.5 lakhs, we want to bring this down to 15 lakhs, which means we will reduce it by 2.5 lakhs. So the difference or the amount we will sell in debt is 2.5 lakhs. And what percentage of debt are we reducing then? So this percentage term is simply 2.5 over a base of 17.5. And if you calculate this, you should get an answer of, I believe, 14 point something. So it should be, yes, 14.2857%. So that's the percentage reduction in debt. So this is a question where you may just get confused over some of the wordings. Like you may just want to jump quickly and say, oh, 5% reduction, but that's not the case. 5% reduction is of the total investment. How much is debt reducing by? So debt is reducing by 2.5 upon 17.5. So that will be 14.29%, which is option C. Correct? So this was an interesting question. There are easy ways to get this wrong. But luckily again, there's no 5% option here. So at least that part is eliminated. But even after that, you have to be kind of careful. And if you are, then you will be rewarded with 2 marks. So that's great. Now, question 50, the next one. It is asking what percentage of the portfolio is not invested in equity and debt combined. That is, what percentage is not invested in equity and debt. So how much is invested in equity and debt? You can see 40 plus 35, that's 75%. So what percentage is not invested? It's 25%, the remaining. So that's it. So question 50, what percentage is not invested? So the not invested part is obviously 100 minus 40 plus 35, that's 25%. So 25% is not invested in equity and debt, and that is option D, which is again the correct answer. So quite an intuitive one. So we are done with question 50, and now we have the one final sum of data interpretation from August 2025, which is this one. It says, assuming all else remained equal and only equity increased by 10% next year, calculate the percentage of portfolio that real estate comprises of. So this is one question which is easy again to get wrong. These 2 mark questions are like that it's not difficult, but it's just easy to get it wrong because of some silly mistake or something like that. So let's carefully evaluate. Your total portfolio is 50 lakhs, out of which equity we calculated above is 20 lakhs. Okay. Now this equity increases by 10% next year. So next year this increases by 10%, which means your equity becomes 22 lakhs. A common mistake would be to calculate 22 as percentage of 50, which would obviously be wrong, or rather the real estate component over 50, which would again be wrong. What you need to do is, obviously, if your equity has increased by 2 lakhs, your total portfolio will also increase by 2 lakhs, and you have a total portfolio now of 52 lakhs. Correct? So now, because the question is about real estate, so what amount do you have invested in real estate? So real estate is around 15% of your total investment, which means 15% of 50 lakhs, which we calculated earlier, is 7.5 lakhs, and this will not change. This will be same 7.5 lakhs. So now the real estate percentage for question 51, the real estate percentage of as part of your total portfolio is 7.5 over 52 lakhs, and if you calculate this, you should get your answer as 14.42 percentage. Do we have this option? Yes, your option A is 14.42 percentage. So answer is option A. Correct? So again, if you read the data carefully and read the question carefully, you can easily understand that the 7.5 over 52 is what they are asking, which is then simply 14.42%. So with that, just like that, we were able to solve the entire data interpretation question paper of your previous TAT, that is August 2025. And if you have the same level of awareness, you should be able to get these answers without a lot of problem and try to score a lot in this area of ACET. Okay. So now we move to the next one. So let's move to the next part, but before that, just a short message on ACET. So ACET is a wonderful examination, primarily concentrated on the mathematics and statistics and logical reasoning that you actually learn in your 11th and 12th grade, and with an edge towards application of those, ensuring you have the foundational knowledge of these topics yourself. This is a perfect entrance exam for your actuarial journey because it kind of covers the knowledge and the application that you need to have in your career going forward if you want to become an actuary. So that's why it comes at a perfect time after 12th, where you are usually giving your other entrance exams as well. So if you're wondering whether or not to give ACET or not, I would suggest go for it. It's 500 rupees. Your registration closes on 26th December and the next exam is just around the corner, 10th January. You can scan and register and accordingly give the exam. If somebody is wondering why choose ACET, or in general just why choose actuarial science, I think it is very clearly one of the most growing skills and most growing in demand profession in the world, and I can see that growth firsthand. It's primarily driven because of low supply. Very few people are doing or have done actuarial science. Even now it's not as it's quite untapped, and the roles are quite unique. They are quite high paying because the decisions that actuaries make impact very high level things at insurance companies, pension funds, etc. And that's why these are high paying roles and quite global in nature. So whatever things we learn as an actuary, they are applicable across the globe. It's not like it's confined to India or a particular region in India or something like that. It's quite universal, and that is why you see such a steep demand for this. Like, just to give you a glimpse of how rare actuaries are, the number of chartered accountants in India is around 3.2 lakhs, whereas if you compare this number to the number of actuaries in India, so 3.2 lakhs is also quite low if you compare it with the size of the nation. And the number of actuaries in India, to the best of my knowledge, that are registered with IAI are around 550 to 600. So that's the number of qualified actuaries we have in India at this point. Obviously a number that is going to grow very soon, but that kind of shows you the level of demand that you may see in this profession. Okay, so yes, that was about ACET. Now we move and continue with our preparation for data interpretation. Let's go to the March 2025 paper and see what we have here. Okay, so we have quite a numeric table. Personally speaking, in real life, when you have these types of tables, it's much easier to work with them in Microsoft Excel, but I don't think so that's allowed in your ACET examination. So we're going to do this raw, first-handed, with first principles using your calculator and your pen. So the following table shows the annual number of laptops sold by different outlets during the observation period, 2021 to 2025 both inclusive, and you have 4 questions based on this. Okay, so quite a lot of numbers. You have 6 outlets and 5 years to cover. Okay, UVW XYZ, that's great. So the first question, the outlet having the highest compounded annual growth rate, CAGR, in sales over the observation period is. Okay, so you want to see which store had the highest annual growth rate. So just like the August 2025, this is the same average annual growth rate, which is the compounded one. Now, here you can directly go and calculate, like 278 upon 183 and then raise to 1 by 5, just like we did earlier. So you can go ahead and do that to calculate annualized growth rate for all the 6 outlets. But before that, let's read the question again and see if we can kind of simplify this for us. So you have the outlet having the highest compounded growth rate in sales during the observation period. So that's the question. And they have given us 4 options, U, V, X and Y. So my suggestion is, for 1 mark, instead of calculating 6 different annual growth rates using the formula, let's do a reverse type of calculation and try to kind of get, out of these 4, which would be the highest. That's what we want to do, right? So question 41, a reverse way to do it. For U, what's the sales in 2025? So that's 278 upon 183. So 278 upon 183. You can calculate the ratio. I think it will come to somewhere around 1.5 roughly. So I'm not calculating the growth rate directly because we just have to compare, right? We don't need to actually show the growth rate. So for now, I'm just keeping these approximation numbers. So this U is 1.5. V is 272 upon 123. So V is 272 upon 123. Now this is quite big because it's more than twice, right? So it's twice is 246 and you have another 26 on top of that. So it's roughly 2.2, approximately 2.2 times. Again, you can just calculate these numbers using your calculators. I'm just trying to show you the main idea over here. Then you have X and Y. X is 284 over 167. And I'll just quickly write 167. And Y is 293 upon 178. Again, you can calculate these numbers, but my point is V is 2.2, which means it grew more than twice. X and Y, 284 over 167. If you do 167 twice, it's 334. So it definitely grew less than 2 times. And same story for Y, it grew less than 2 times. So the point is, because you just want the highest one, instead of actually calculating the growth rates and everything, just an idea, a ballpark itself is enough for this particular answer. And these are the tips you can use to save time in exam, right? A, you don't need to calculate for all 6 of them. B, you don't actually need to calculate the annual rate. You can just compare the last upon the first, because anywhere final answer, the annual growth rate itself, will be raised to 1 by 5 for all 4 of them. So whatever is highest over a span of 5 years will be the highest for the annualized growth rate as well, right? It won't be different. So in that case, you can clearly see that V is a clear-cut winner based on high-level numbers, and that's your correct answer. So your answer here is simply B. So even without calculating the growth rate, you can confirm that the answer will be V. Correct? So this is how you can probably save some crucial time during the exam. You won't be able to save that in the next question. So the steepest year-on-year growth observed in the annual median sales across outlets was. So there are 2 things here. One, you have to find out which year-on-year had the highest jump or highest growth. But growth in what? Growth in the annual median sales. So you have to first calculate median sales for all the 5 years across the outlets and then find out the growth. Okay. So how will we find the median? Let's look at the data. Can I say we have 6 outlets? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For median, I know I have to arrange them in an ascending order. Okay. Now, if it was odd number of observations, I could have just taken the middlemost and that would be my median. Because here we have 6 observations, the median will be 3rd and 4th observations average. So it will be the average of 3rd and 4th observation. That's how we solve for median, right? So I'll just write here 6 observations. So therefore median each year will be 3rd plus 4th as per the ascending order observation upon 2. Correct? So once this is clear, now let's try and find the median for the 5 years, and then let's look at the growth rate. So 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25. Let's find the median for each of those years. So 2021, you can see the third and fourth highest values. So this is 1, then 2. So 3 would be 178, fourth would be 183. So I'll just write those over here, 178 plus 183 upon 2. Same with 2022, that would be, you can just find out 95, 178, then you have 269, then you have 198 and 269, correct? So 198, 269. So I'll just write here 198 plus 269. I'll do divided by 2 later. 2023, you have 133, 161, 176, 226. So 176 and 226 are the third and fourth. So 176 plus 226. 2024, it is 107, 225. You have two 237s. So third and fourth is 237, and 64 and 82 is fine. So 237 plus 237, this is easy, it's the same number. And 2025, it is 213, then 196, 213, and then you have 272 and 278. So it's 272 plus 278. All of these will be divided by 2, and you will get your median for each of those years. So that's necessarily your first step. So the first one is 180.5. Second one you can just see, so this is 269 and 198, right? So 269 and 198. So that will mean 71 divided by 2, that's 35.5. And if you just add it over here, this is 233.5. Then this one, 176 and 226, it's quite straightforward. I think it should be plus 201. Here you have 237, so that's simply 237. And finally you have 275. So I just calculate all of this based on the top of my head. I would suggest you can use calculator, just to avoid any complications. And now simply let's look at the growth, year-on-year growth. So this time the median grew by 53, correct? 180, 233, so that's 53. Then it kind of got reduced by 32.5, then it increased by 36, and then it got increased by, this would be 38. Yeah. So just divided by the base. I mean, you don't even need to divide it. You can just clearly see 53 is a clear winner because it has the lowest denominator and it is the highest numerator. So this will be definitely the clear winner. We need the number, so let's calculate 180.5, and this will be, so 53 by 180.5, that's 29.36%. So the answer here is 29.36%, and this is over the span 2021 to 2022. So let's see if this is the option. So you can see 29.4% from 2021 to 2022, and this is our final answer. So here the answer is simply A. Correct. So quite a technical sum. For 1 mark, I would say it's actually quite a lot to do because you have to calculate those medians and you have to calculate those growth rates. So yes, you can draw this intuitive knowledge that this will be the highest, but I understand in exam time you will want to actually check for some reason. So in any case, 29.4%, that is in the first year itself, you see the highest jump in the median. Perfect. So that was your second question of this particular data set. Let's move to the third one. So it says the outlet with the highest sales in the observation period had its worst year in. So first you have to find out of the 6 outlets, which outlet had the highest sales across. Like in those 5 years, which one had the highest sales. So essentially what you need to do is add the 5 outlets and compare which one has the highest. So you'll add all the sales for U, then V, W, X, Y and Z. Okay. So do that, like just have U is something, V is something and so on till Z is something. This will be the total of all the 5-year sales. I can say that, I mean, you can do this, but I can say that clearly Y would be the highest because it has years like 379 and 293 and 282, and none of those have any such years. Like the highest others are going to is 278, and it is not falling down a lot. So Y would definitely be the highest, and you can check this also. So Y is the outlet with the highest sales. The reason I'm not calculating this is because we just need the highest outlet, right? We don't need to calculate the number of sales, etc. So that's why I am not calculating everything. So this is the outlet with highest sales, and now we have to find which was Y's first year. So Y's worst year would be, you can see clearly, the 178 one. So that is in 2021 it had its worst year. So that's option A. So Y had the worst year in terms of sales as 2021, and that's obviously answer option A. So this is how you have to solve it. As you can see, in all the three questions, I did not calculate everything, right? I skipped a lot of calculation steps, and this is something that's recommended. If you go on to calculate everything, yes, you will be 100% accurate, but it will come at the cost of time, which you may, not be able to apply for other subjects or other areas of the subject as well. So that is why you have to keep on ensuring you have that presence of mind to see what's the correct answer. Okay. So with that, we move to the fourth and final question of this particular data. And it says the market share of an outlet in a single year is defined as sales by that outlet as a proportion of total sales of all outlets during that year. During the observation period, the lowest market share of an outlet in a single year was. Okay. So lowest market share of an outlet in a single year was which one? So now again you may be inclined to just go and find like market share for all 6 outlets or for all the 5 years. But you don't have to do that at all. Let's look at the options. It says 8% by V, 7% by V, 8% by X, or 7% by X. So these are the two options majorly. It's either V or X, and it's either 8% or 7%. So we can just focus on these two for all those years. So that is V, you can see 123, the worst year is 107, and for X the worst year is 2022, which is 95. So there's a good chance that this is the worst year. Let's check for X in 2022. So the total sales in 2022 was 178 plus 272 plus 269 plus 95 plus 379 plus 198. So that's 1391, which was the total sales in 2022 for X. So question 44. In 2022, total sales were 1391, and X's percentage in that was 95 upon 1391, which is, if I just divide 95 divided by this answer, it's almost 6.83%. So roughly 7%. So this could be an answer. Let's just double confirm with respect to V. So V's worst year was this 2024. Let's just double confirm it quickly. So 264 plus 107 plus 237 plus 225 plus 282 and plus 237. So that's 1352. So the total sales, and this was year 2024, right? 2024. Yes. So total sales in 2024 were 1352. You can already understand that this was 1391. So the total sales have fallen. V's sales are more than X's sale in 2022. So naturally V's percentage would be higher only, but we'll just calculate it. That's 107 over 1352, and that is simply 7.9%. So approximately 8%. So for the respective worst years for X and V, we calculated what was their market share in those years, and we see this 7% by X was by far the worst by any participant, and that was in 2022. So we can then go with the answer 7% attained by outlet X, which is option D. Correct. Again, I hope you have noticed you have to be smart with respect to your calculations. You don't need to calculate each and everything. That's the only message. Perfect. If everyone is okay till here, this was a good question, quite complicated compared to what we saw in August 2025. So let's hope the next questions in March 2025 are not that complicated. So okay, we have this chart below that contains results of on-time performance of a delivery service provider separated for peak and off-peak hours. And there are 3 questions on this: 45, 46, 47. Now, a different thing about this question is they have just given a chart with this photo and they have not given any data. So they have not given the data numbers, they have given this chart, and I would assume that all their questions would be asking in approximate terms, like approximately all of this, right? So let's first try and put some numbers to this data. So you have off peak and peak, and you have late and on time. Okay, so I'll just write the data here that you have late, on time, and you have off peak and peak. That's it, right? So let's just give those numbers here. So late, so first off peak, late looks like approximately 5 and on time looks approximately 45. So you can just try to sort of imagine a line and approximate it. So this should be 5 and this should be 45, and at the same time on peak hours you can see this is approximately 60 whereas late is approximately 40. So again it's quite an approximation. So that's 40 and 60, which means I'll just calculate this data nicely. So total in off peak hours were 50, total in peak hours were 100, total late were 45, total on time were 105, and naturally this means the total deliveries were 150. So once we have sorted and organized this data, now hopefully attempting the questions should be relatively straightforward, correct? So let's see. The first question is ratio of deliveries during peak hours to that during off peak hours is approximately. So I told you they will most likely use the word approximately here because they have created a chart, right? So they are not sure, or they are not making us sure that this is the exact number. So that's why it's an approximate type thing. But yeah, we can easily calculate this ratio of deliveries during peak to off peak hours. So question 45, is it? Yeah, 45. And you can see in peak hours we had 100 deliveries, in off peak hours we had 50 deliveries. So that's 100 to 50, which is obviously 2:1. Do we have 2:1 as an option? So answer is simply C, correct? So this data will really come in handy, as you can see. Otherwise you would have to go back and forth with the chart to do this, which is not very convenient. This is quite convenient. 46 says let success rate be defined as an on-time deliveries as a proportion of total deliveries. So whatever total deliveries you do, on-time deliveries will be counted as a success part of it. So you are required to calculate the ratio of success rate during peak hours to that of off-peak hours. So it's quite interesting. What is success rate during peak hours? Success rate in peak hours. So can I say that will simply be in peak hours we had 60 on time upon 100. So 60 upon 100, that is 60%. And success rate in off peak hours, that would be 45 upon 50. So it's quite intuitive also. During off peak you do not have a lot of traffic and stuff, and that's why you're just able to deliver on time, and that is 90%. And you have to give the ratio of peak hours during off or to non-peak hours. So we have to give the final answer as 60 to 90, which is nothing but 2:3. So let's see if we have that option. Don't be confused and reverse it or something like that, right? So there may be an option of 3:2. You don't have to give that as the answer. Your answer is 2:3. So here luckily they don't have a 3:2 option, and the answer is simply B, that is 2:3. So answer is B, correct? So we computed the success rates and then we just compared those. So that's question 46. Now we have one more question left from this particular data set. Let's see that. So The overall proportion of late deliveries combining both peak and off-peak periods is approximately, so the overall proportion of late deliveries, right? So luckily we have this table. Total late deliveries is 45 and total deliveries were 150. So you can just directly calculate this number as well. That is late deliveries upon, this is late deliveries upon total deliveries, and that is simply 45 upon 150, which is 30%. So on a total basis, 30% it's late delivery, and you can see how that number kind of is dragged by these peak hours, because you have more deliveries in the peak hours where you're late a lot. In off peak hours you're actually quite good, 90% is very good, but you see because of those peak hour issues which has the higher volume, your average is completely tilted towards the late delivery, and that's why your overall proportion becomes 30%, which is option C. So here the answer is option C, which is the correct answer. So that was a very nice question 45 to 47. Again I'll repeat, because it was chart, your first thing during exam time should be to create a nice table so that you have numbers. Once you have numbers, then tackling those questions is a cakewalk, correct? And I will apply a similar logic to this next one, because the next data set also tries to confuse the hell out of you, so you just have to be on top of your game. So let's see. The city of Dholakpur has 4 garment manufacturers: Alpha, Beta, Gamma and Delta Limited. Very good. The following information is available to you about their financial performance in 2024. Sales of Alpha are half that of Beta, whereas profits of Alpha are double that of Beta. Very nice. Expenses of Gamma are 6 crores less than those of Alpha, whereas those of Beta are 3 times those of Alpha. Okay. Profit of Delta is 2 crores less than that of Gamma. Sales of Gamma are 30 crores or 1/4 of those of Delta. Sales of Alpha are 50 crores. So lot of number jungle. We will try and first consolidate all these numbers before attempting any question. Okay. They have given some notes as well that profit is sales minus expenses and profit margin is simply profit by sales. So these will be important for the 4 questions 48, 49, 50, 51. But as I said, before attempting anything, we will try and find sales, expenses and profit for all the 4 companies. So you have Alpha, Beta, Gamma and Delta, correct? So sales for these 4, let's try and understand, can we find the sales? So Alpha is half of Beta, that's not helpful yet. Okay, this is about expenses, this is about profit. Yes, sales of Gamma are 30 crores. So Gamma sales are given as 30 crores, so that's good. Or 1/4 those of Delta, which means indirectly they have given Delta sales also here. That's Gamma sales are 30 crores, which is 1/4 of Delta, which means Delta is 4 times that of Gamma, and that is 120 crores, correct? Alpha sales are directly given as 50 crores, and do we have any information on Beta? Yes, the first line itself, that is sales of Alpha are half that of Beta, which means here the sales are 100 crores. So that's a great thing we've figured out already. 50, 100, 30, 120, you can just add up, comes out to 300 crores. That is your total sales. Okay. So this part was quite straightforward because the data fed you everything. Now it is going to be a little challenging to calculate expenses and profit, but let's give it a best shot. Okay. So let's see what they have given in terms of expenses and profit. So one thing they have given is Alpha's profit are double that of Beta. Okay. So Alpha's profit is double that of Beta. So kind of like this is 2x, this is x. Okay. Just for now I'm writing this. Expenses of Gamma are 6 crores less than those of Alpha, whereas those of Beta are 3 times those of Alpha. Okay, so Gamma's expenses are 6 crores less than Alpha. So what they are saying is Gamma's expense are 6 crores less than Alpha, which means if alpha's expenses are y, gamma's expenses are y minus 6. Okay, and beta's expenses are 3 times those of alpha, so beta's expenses then would be 3y. Okay, so before moving further, you can actually see you have two equations in two variables here, that is 50 minus y is 2x, that's your equation 1 for alpha, and 100 minus 3y is x. So we should use this opportunity to try and find out more about x and y's values, because then it will kind of solve all the remaining things. So you can just say that, okay, therefore, just rearranging these equations, 2x plus y is 50 and x plus 3y is 100. You can multiply equation 2 into 2, so therefore you get 2x plus 6y is equals to 200, and 2x plus y is 50. Let's say this is equation 2, this is 1. Essentially what you want to do is 2 minus 1. So what is 2 minus 1? 2x gets cancelled. You have therefore 5y is 150, 200 minus 50, and therefore y is 30. So you get y as 30. So I'll just write here in the bracket, this is 30, which means this is 20. This is 90, 3y, and which means this is 100 minus 90, which is 10, which conforms to our earlier fact, right? This profit is twice. Perfect. Gamma's expenses now would become 24, which means their profit will now be 6, and now all we need is delta. So what have they told about delta? That delta's profit is 2 crores less than that of gamma. So gamma's profit is 6, delta's profit is 4, which means their expenses are 116. And this way we have kind of solved for all the, so I'll just put these in brackets as well. These are not negatives, these are just, because these are 2x, that's why I just wrote it like this. But yeah, so you have 20, 10, 6 and 4 crores as profit. So you can just calculate for now, 10, 20, 40 crores total profit, and 260 crores is the total expenses. So once you solve this, the point is now solving these sums will be very easy. This was the most important part by far, correct? So now let's try and solve these sums. So the first one is, what are the combined sales of the 4 manufacturers? Now luckily we have already calculated this, that is 300 crores. So the answer to this 48th question will simply be 300 crores. That is, answer is option A, correct? So that's the benefit of creating the table. Yes, the table takes time, but now your answers will come very quickly. In 2024, the expenses of delta exceeded that of beta by, so we can just clearly see delta's expenses of 116, beta's expenses were 90, so 116 minus 90. So question 49, you have delta's expense minus beta's expense. And again, because of the table, you don't have to do anything else. 116 minus 19, that's 26 crores, which is option C. So your answer is simply option C, correct? We can move to the last two questions of this particular diet. That is, in 2024, the median of the profit earned by the 4 manufacturers is, so again it's median, you will have it in ascending order, and again because it's even numbers, 4. So you will take an average of the second and third observation, correct? So let's create the ascending order of profits. So you have 4, 6, 10, 20. So question 50, your profits are 4, 6, 10 and 20. Obviously these two are the middlemost values, second and third. So we'll take an average of these. So median is 6 plus 10 by 2, that is 8 crores. So the answer should be 8 crores, which is option B. Answer is option B, correct? And now we move to the last question of this particular diet, that is, in 2024, the ratio of profit margins, they have explained it in the question, what is profit margin. The ratio of profit margins of the company with highest profit margin to that of lowest profit margin is, and they have given all of these options. So let's try and calculate the profit margins for all 4 of them. So Let's write the sales and profit figures. So 51. Alpha is 20 crores over 50 crores. Beta is 10 over 100. Gamma is 6 over 30. And finally, delta is 4 over 120. By far it has the worst profit margin, you can see. So this is 40%, this is 10%, this is 20%, and finally this is 4 by 120, that's 1 by 30 or 3.33%. Correct? Best, worst, the ratio between them 40 is to 3.33 is simply 12 is to 1. So this is 12 times, basically the ratio is 12 times that of the lowest one. So your options are between 2 and 6, between 7 and 10, between 13 and 16, or none of the above. And very rarely now you have an answer that is none of the above. Correct? I always appreciate the fact that in exam environment, writing an answer that is none of the above is very difficult. But here you can clearly see we calculate the profit margins and we find out that the ratio is 12, which is none of the options above. So here your option is, or your answer is D, that is, it is none of the above. Correct? So that was your March 2025 paper, definitely more complicated than the August one. But again, if you consolidate your numbers at the start itself, then quite doable. And with that, we move to the last section for the day, or the last paper for the day, which will be the December data interpretation paper. Yes, so let's now move to the December 2024 one, and let's see how this data interpretation sum was. So let's go. So it says the following chart shows the annual production of vehicles by two vehicle manufacturers X and Y during the period 97 to 2002. So that means a total of 6 years, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. So you have 6 years, two manufacturers, and luckily they have given the numbers here, so we don't need to create a separate table, right? If you want, you can always create a table for your own reference. Because you just, if you don't want to get confused between which one is X, which one is Y, just create a table. But otherwise here, quite straightforward. So let's get into it. Questions 41 to 44 are based on this information. So 4 questions based on this. Let's see. So first, the median annual combined production of vehicles during the observation period is. So we have to calculate the annual combined. So we have to calculate the combined production of these two manufacturers and then find its median, right? Again, 6 observations because there will be 6 years. So 6 years ka total production we will calculate and then arrange it in ascending order. Third and fourth observations, average is what we need to take. So let's do that. Question 41. Let's quickly calculate the totals. So total production or combined production would be 139 plus 119, that is 258. Then 120 plus 99, that is 219. 100 plus 141, that's 241. 78 plus 128, so that would be 306. 120 and 107, that's 227. And finally 159 and 148, so that will be 307. So 307. So these are your different, numbers. Just a small correction. The fourth year, that is 2000, is 78 plus 128, that is 206 and not 306. So just a small correction here. But yeah, these are your 6 different combined productions. Let's put them in an ascending order. That is 206, 219, 227, 241. Then you have 258 and 307. So this is the ascending order. Your third and fourth observations are this. You can just take the average of these two and that will be 234. So 234,000 is the median. Let's see. So the median is between 230 and 240. Yes, no, no, and no. So the answer is simply option A, correct? Which is the correct answer. So you find that combined production, you find the median, and you are good to go. Okay. Next one, the highest year-on-year increase in production by manufacturer was. So you have four options. Simply calculate the year-on-year increase in these four options, and the highest one of those will be your final answer. So the first is X 98 to 99. So from 98 to 99, X went from 99 to 141. So let's just write all these numbers. So 141 over 99, that's your first option. X from 2000 to 2001, so that is from 78 he went to 120. So that's 120 upon 78. Then you have, because it's a year-on-year increase, it will not be in absolute terms, right? You have to do it in a relative terms, that is the percentage terms. Y from 2001 to 2. So Y in 2001 was 107, it went to 148. So 148 upon 107. And finally X from 1 to 2. That is from 120 to 159. So 159 by 120. So these are the four options. Just simply calculate the ratios for all of them. I will quickly do that. So 141 over 99, that is roughly 42.42%. So I'm calculating directly the growth. So it's 1.4242, which is 42.42% growth. Then you have 120 over 78. I believe this should be the highest. And yes, here it is currently 53.85%. Let's check the others, but I don't think so any of them is more than 50%. So this should be the answer, but yeah, 107. So the third one is 38.32%. So again, definitely not high. And 159 by 120. So the last one is simply 32.5%, which means that the highest growth is by far of the second one, and the second option was X from 2000 to 2001. So you can simply say that the answer here will be B, which is of course the correct answer. Correct. So again, here you don't need to really calculate all the growth factors, just use the options that are given and then try to calculate, right? The problem or the area when this approach will not work is, let's say if you have option D, which is none of the above. If you have a none of the above option, then you actually have to look at all the growth factors, all the growths. Again, you don't need to look at all of them because, for example, this is a declining one. So why would you look at that? You just need to look at all the growth ones, this to this, this to this, this, and these two. So almost 4 or 5 growth rates you need to calculate. And if the answer is neither of them, then you go with the none of the above option. Here, because you have 4 different options, so the answer has to be one of them. And that is why we can just use this reverse calculation approach. Okay. So that was question 42. Let's move to question 43 now. So during the entire observation period, relative to the total production of Y, the total production of X was. So we just need to calculate total productions by the two companies, that is X and Y. So let's do that. X was 119 plus 99 plus 141 plus 78 plus 120 plus 159. So X's total production was 716. So I'll just write here question 43. X's total production is 716 over the observation period of 6 years. And now let's do the same for Y. So for Y, all the red numbers, so 139 plus 120 plus 100 plus 128 plus 107 and finally plus 148. So that's 742. So Y's production was 742. And what is the question? How is it framed? So it says relative to production by Y. So we have to calculate it as a ratio of Y. So X's production as a ratio of Y. So we need to calculate 716 divided by this. And that comes to, so 716 divided by 742. This is 96.5%. So roughly it's in the 3% range. So it's less than Y by roughly 3-4%. So you can see more by 3-5, no. Nearly the same, no. Less by around 3 to 5%. So this is the answer, that relative to Y, X's production was less by 3 to 5%. And you can see that this means less by 3.5% to be more specific, and this means that your answer is option C, correct? So that was again a straightforward one, just total productions, calculate the ratio and you should get the answer. And with that, we'll move to the last question of this particular data set, which is for a particular year, the market share of a company is defined as number of vehicles manufactured by that company divided by the total number of vehicles manufactured by both companies. During the observation period, the market share was maximum of. So during the observation period, in which year, like with a company dominated the other highest, that's what we're trying to say. So again, you can just do the reverse calculation here. So y in 99, x in 2000, x into 99, y, x in 2000. So one thing is clear, is between 99 and 2000 only. And now it's very easy. If x had more sales, for example 99, you will need to calculate for y, right? Because x will be the dominant one. So just 99 and 2000, whoever was highest will win. So let's see. In 99, you can clearly see x was at 141, y was at 100. So x's share in 1999 will be question 44. X in 9, you don't even need to calculate for y. X in 1999 was simply 141 upon, so you had 141 and 100, right? So upon 141 plus 100, which was the total sales, and this is 241. The answer is 58.5% market share was held by X in 99. And now let's look at 2000. So in the year 2000, Y had more sales than X, so you just need to calculate for Y now. So 128 over 128 plus 78. So Y in 2000 would be 128 over 78 plus 128. And if you calculate this, you should get 128 upon this will be 206, right? Yeah, so that comes to 62.14%. And you can clearly see that Y in 2000 had a much higher market share. So that is why Y in 2000 is the correct answer, which is option B. So the answer to question 44 is option B, correct? So that was a good one. It was a decently difficult question. Like I won't say it's difficult. What people can get lost is too much into the data, trying to calculate a lot of things. Just look at the options and try to work your way backwards and you should be good to go. Okay. So that was your first data set of December paper. Now let's move to the next one. Okay, so again we have a chart here and there is no table. So our first job, I hope you know by now, is to create that table. So the chart below contains the results of a survey asking people to specify their favorite genre of films. Okay, and you can see in this chart you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories, 5 genres, and you have 2 sets of audience. So you have adults and you have children, and you have this number of people over here. So let's do one thing. Let's try and write down the number of people in each of those cases. Okay, so you have 5 categories: adult sci-fi, drama, then you have horror and animation. So I'll just write here horror and animation, and finally we have, so adult is a category also. Sorry, it's action, not adult. So this is action. So action is one of those categories, and now you have 2 sets of audience: adult, children. So now let's try and accurately write these numbers. So this time they've given us a graph kind of a paper, so you should be able to exactly point the numbers. So for example, in the action one, so you can see children are 11 because it's 10 plus 1, so 11 children, and total you have 28. So 28 in total, 11 in children, which means automatically 17 adults. Sci-fi, you can clearly see that you have 14 children and you have 32 total. So 32 is the total, 14 children, which means 18 adults. So I'll just write here in circle so that you know that these are the balancing figures which I've calculated. For drama, you can see you have 7 children, and 21 in total. So 21 in total, 7 children, which means 14 in drama, 14 adults in drama. Horror, you have one child. I mean, I don't know who is that child who's watching horror movies, but okay. So you have that one child and total of 11 people. So 11, 1, which means 10 adults. And finally, in animation, as you would expect, you have a lot of children, 31 children, and you have 37 total. So 37 is the total. You have 31, was it right? Yes, 31 children. So 6 in animation. So we have tabulated all our numbers, and this should give us a good foundation to do the sums now. So let's see. Question 45. Of the total survey respondents, the proportion of adults was close to, so quite straightforward now. Just need to add these. So 17 and 18, that's 35, plus 14, that's 49, 59 and 65. And this 25 plus 7, 32, 33, and this is 64. So 65 and 64, total of 129 respondents. So you can just calculate that adults were 65 divided by 129. Question 45, your proportion of adults is 65 upon 129, which is 50.4% roughly. So do you have 50.4%? Yes, option C, and that you can see is the correct answer. And you can see the options now. So it's 49.6, 50, 50.4, which means the options are very close. So even if you get one of these numbers incorrectly from the chart, you will get a wrong answer, and that means in an MCQ simply 0 marks. So be very careful when you create this table. Look at the table twice and thrice, so just ensure that you've got it correctly. Let's move to the next question. So the proportion of children who prefer a genre other than animation. So proportion of children who prefer a genre other than animation is, so you can clearly see there are a total of 64 children and 31 of those prefer animation. So simply what you need to find is proportion of children other than animation, which is obviously 1 minus those who prefer animation, correct? So that is 1 minus 31 by 64, which is obviously 33 by 64. You can just cross multiply and get this, and 33 over 64, that is simply 51.56%. So do we have this option 51.56 or 51.6%? And the answer is yes, it's option A, which is again your correct answer. So answer is A, that is 51.6% children prefer a genre other than animation. So that was question 45 and 46. We have one more question on this particular one. So the genre where the spread of people between adults and children who prefer it is most even is, so like you have almost equal number of adults and children preferring that genre. That's the question. So the closest to a 50-50 split type of thing. So you can just see overall 11, 17, here you have 14, 18, 7, 14, 1, 10, 31, 6. So you have a huge difference here, so this will not be the case. 1 and 10 definitely not the case. 14 and 7 definitely not the case. So the two comparable ones are action and sci-fi. In action you have 17 adults, 11 children, and in sci-fi you have 18 adults, 14 children. If you want, you can calculate the proportion, but I can clearly see that in this sci-fi one they are quite close. So out of 32, 18 and 14 they have split, so it's almost 60-40 percentage, and that is the closest to 50 you will see. So you can clearly see the genre is sci-fi, which means the answer is option D. So question 47, you can just compare action versus sci-fi. You don't even need to look at the others, and for your final answer all you need to do is just calculate, okay, 17 upon 28, whatever the answer is here, and this should be 18 upon 32, whatever the answer is here. The closest to 50% wins, which will be this one, and therefore your answer is sci-fi, which is option D if I'm not wrong. Okay. So that was your question 47, which was based on the second data set we saw. Now, if everyone is clear with this, we can move to the last data set for the day, which is a very interesting one. So let's read this. Chess fans, I think there are a lot of chess fans in India at this point. So it's on the World Championship. So let's have a look at this. The International Chess Championship is a tournament of between two chess players, the defending champion and the challenger, right? So if you remember the latest tournament, Gukesh was the challenger, Ding Junhui was obviously the defending champion, and Gukesh naturally won. But yeah, so here you see it is a series of 14 games, numbered 1 to 14, where the winner of each game gets a point and the loser gets none. Okay, so it's a World Championship normal chess format. Winner will get 1 point, loser will get 0 point. If a game ends as a draw, both players get half a point. Very good. The winner of the tournament is the one with more points at the end of the 14 games. Naturally, if both players end with same number of points, the tournament ends as a tie. So if you remember, in reality it was very close to a tie. On the last day they were heading for a draw, but then Gukesh came up with a win, and that's how he won the tournament. The following additional facts are known. Now this is the interesting part which you need to note down for your final data. That is, all prime numbered games ended as a draw. Okay, so prime numbers, I hope you know which are those. So those ended as a draw. Moreover, all games ending in a draw were prime numbered. So what are they trying to say? That prime numbered ended as a draw. Also, there were no other draws. That's what they're trying to say here. That is, all the draws that happened were prime numbered games. So all the non-prime numbered games had a result. Either the defending champion won or the challenger won. But it had a result. That's what they're trying to say here. And finally, the defending champion won the games that were numbered a perfect square and no others. So defending champion won the games which were the perfect square numbers. Okay. So let's try and just simply create all the games and who won, who lost, and the points system. Okay, because that's what we will be asked in the next 4 questions. So let's do that. I'll create this entire table of first the match. So there are 14 matches, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. It's very important to create this table, by the way. 10 11 12 13 and I'll just set it 14. So I still lost a little bit of space at the end, but that's okay. So match. Now we'll see whether the defending champion won it or the challenger won it. We'll give the points accordingly, and it will be very helpful, as you will see in the further questions as well, that we need the cumulative points as well. So cumulative points by, again, this will be the champion, and here the defending champion, and here you will see the challenger's cumulative points. Okay. So first, you are told all prime numbered games ended as a draw. So I hope everyone is aware of prime numbers. Prime numbers are those which are only a factor of their own and 1. They are not divided by any other number, right? Always remember, 1 is neither a prime nor a composite number. So 1 is not a prime. 2 is a prime, which means this was a draw. So this is 0.5, 0.5 points. 3 is a prime number, so this was a draw, 0.5, 0.5. 4 is obviously not a prime. 5 is a prime, so this was 0.5, 0.5. 6 is not a prime, 7 is a prime, so this is again 0.5, 0.5. 8 is not a prime, 9 is not a prime, 10 is not a prime. 11th is a prime, so 0.5, 0.5, it was a draw. And finally 13th, which is 0.5, 0.5, was a draw. So these are all the draws. As you can see, between 1 to 14, there are a total of 6 draws because of 6 prime numbers. Perfect. Now you are told that defending champion won all the games which were numbered a perfect square. So 1 is obviously a perfect square, so he won this game, which means challenger had 0 point on this game. 4 is again a perfect square, so defending champion won this, the challenger did not. 6 is not a perfect square, 8 is not a perfect square, 9 is a perfect square, so again 1, 0. And then after 9, the next perfect square is of course 16, which is out of this. So the defending champion did not win any other games. Okay. So what about the remaining ones? What happened in the 6th match, 8th match, and so on? So now you can just pre-fill it that, okay, all the games that ended in a draw were prime numbered, which means these games were not a draw. The defending champion won the games which were perfect square and no others, which means the remaining ones, naturally, the challenger won it, right? They've not given it in the question, but that's what you have to interpret. And that's literally data interpretation. So here, 6th game was won by the challenger. 8th game was won by the challenger, 10th game was won by the challenger, 12th was won by the challenger, and 14th was won by the challenger. And that's the split of the games that have won and or lost between the two. Perfect. So if this is clear, we can now create the cumulative points, which is even more important. So after the first game, defending champion had 1 point, challenger had 0. After the second game, it was 1.5, 0.5. Third game, it was 2 and 1. So just adding those points, right? After the fourth game, this was 3 and 1. So the defending champion had a very good lead at this point. After the fifth game, it was 3.5, 1.5. Then finally, the challenger won his first game in the tournament, which is so 3.5 to 2.5. Again a draw, so this was 4 to 3. Defending champion won again, so challenger won again, so this is 4 to 4. Then you can see the defending champion won, so 5 4. Again the challenger won, so this was 5 5. They had a draw, so this was 5.5 5.5. Finally the challenger won again, so this was 5.5 6.5. Again they had a draw, so this was 6 and 7, and finally it was 6 to 8. So out of the 14 points, this was split as 6 and 8 between the defending champion and the challenger. Okay. So now once we are done with this table, let's try and calculate let's try and answer the questions. Okay. So question 48 was, who won the tournament? And you can clearly see that at the end of the tournament, it is the challenger with 8 points who definitely won the tournament. So question 48, you can clearly see challenger won the tournament 8 to 6. So the answer is option B, correct? So B is the answer, which is the correct answer. 49th question, the difference in total points of the two players was, so again, because we created this table completely, now it's very easy for us to answer all of this. So question 49 is obviously 8 minus 6, that is a difference of 2 points, which is actually quite a big difference in chess terms, by the way. But anyway, that is answer is option C over here, which is 2 points difference. Then let's answer the last two questions. The first instance in the tournament where the challenger had more points than the defending champion could have happened in game numbered. And this is why that cumulative table is very important, because at what point was the challenger actually winning the tournament? So as you see, from the very start he was behind 1-0, he was behind here. He tied here at the 8th game, he tied. He was again behind in the next game. Then again he was tied here. And finally it was in the 12th game where he was ahead of the defending champion. So you can clearly see in the 12th game his cumulative points exceeded those of the defending champion, and that is why answer to question 50 is the 12th game where the scores were 5.5 to 6.5. So that is the 12th game, which is option D. And considering he won by a margin of 2 points, it's quite late in the tournament that he started winning, right? And that was option D. And finally, the 51st and the last question for the day, people, was the number of matches after which the scores were tied after the start of the tournament was. So after is in capitals, by the way. So what are they asking here? The number of matches after which the scores were tied after start of the tournament. So naturally at start of the tournament, you started at 0-0. Then the score started changing. What they are asking is how many times were they tied? How many times were the scores tied? So you can just go to this cumulative table. Again, this is very helpful. Without this, it would have been a nightmare to do this. And now you can see that the scores were tied. Not here, not here, not here. No, 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 no. Here. So this was 1, then 2, and 3. So 3 times 3 matches were there, which is 8th, 10th, and 11th match, after which the scores were tied. Other than this, in all of the games, there was somebody winning, somebody losing, right? So question 51, you can see that 8, 10, and 11th match had the scores tied. So total of 3 games, which is option B. And with that, we are done with this sum. Again, I'll repeat, we were able to solve the answers very quickly because of this table. It took a lot of time to create this table, but once we have this, the answers were quite straightforward. And if you just think about it, you scored 2 to 4 and 6 marks. So 6 marks you were able to score very easily because of this one table. Why I'm insisting on this is, I know in exam environment, you wouldn't want to waste a lot of time in these tables. You would just want to go to the question and try and find those using the original data set, which would be kind of a mistake here, because there are 14 games, a lot of things you have to take care of. So you have to continuously go back and calculate and do back and forth, and you will very likely make a mistake in that case. Other than that, just create this table and your 6 marks are in your pocket. And with that, obviously, we have come to the end of today's masterclass session on data interpretation. We solved the past 3 exam papers on data interpretation. Each had a different, I would say, level of difficulty. Probably, according to me, the March 25 was the most difficult one because it had a lot of numbers you had to deal with. But in every case, I hope you now understand that depending on the data, we covered a lot of different types of data, right? We had charts, we had pie charts, we had proper those line charts and everything, graph charts. The idea is and obviously the last one, the chess one, where you had just completed descriptive data. The idea is, based on the data type, just understand how to create a perfect table sort of thing for you at the start itself, such that then answering the following questions is a very manageable job, right? What you may have done is, based on the marks and based on the time that you have, you would have probably allocated some time to each question, and that would work for the other sections. But for data interpretation, where you have this consolidation of questions, that is 3-4 questions are asked from just one particular data set, you have to give a good amount of time to the data first, understand it, consolidate those, tabulate it, and then the remaining time you can very quickly grasp the remaining time, the remaining questions for the data interpretation section. So that's a sort of slight change in approach which I would recommend for data interpretation. If you are able to do this, and if you're able to answer these questions, as you can see, the questions are not that difficult. It's just that data consolidation is the important part. Once you're able to do that, then it should be relatively manageable. So with that, we come to the end of today's masterclass session. Thank you so much for those who have listened to this, and I wish you all the very best for your ACET examinations. Do ACET, and hope to see you guys soon in the actuarial circles. So thank you.